Someone just walked into the room. You haven't spoken to them. You don't know their name, their history, or a single thing they have ever done. And yet, before they have taken their second step, something inside you has already reached a verdict. You've decided whether you trust them. It took about 1/10 of a second. 1/10. Faster than a blink, faster than a breath, faster than the thought, who is that? A judgment was passed. A file was opened. A person was sorted. And here is the strange part. You were not the one who decided. You only found out afterward. So who did? This is the quiet machinery running behind your eyes every time a stranger crosses your path. It is older than your language. It is older than your name. And it is making calls about people all day long without ever once asking your permission. Start with the speed, because the speed is almost impossible to believe. In 2006, two psychologists at Princeton, Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov, sat people down in front of photographs of faces they had never seen. They showed each face for 1/10 of a second, 100 milliseconds, then snatched it away. Then they asked simple things. Is this person trustworthy? Are they competent? Do you like them? Are they aggressive? The volunteers complained, of course. 1/10 of a second is barely a glimpse. They felt like they were just guessing. But they were not guessing. When Todorov lined up those split-second answers against the answers of other people who were allowed to stare at the same faces for as long as they liked, the verdicts matched, almost perfectly. Unlimited time barely changed a thing. It only made people more confident in the judgment they had already reached in the first 100 milliseconds. Sit with what that means. The opinion you form of a stranger in the first 1/10 of a second is, more or less, the opinion you are going to keep. All that time you think you spent getting to know a new face is mostly your brain quietly gathering reasons to agree with a decision it already made. So where does that decision come from? Todorov kept digging, and he found something elegant underneath. Almost all of these instant judgments, trustworthy, dominant, likable, threatening, collapse into just two questions your brain is really asking. The first, are you going to help me or hurt me? The second, are you strong enough to actually do it? Friend or foe, strong or weak? That is the entire ancient questionnaire, and your brain fills it out about every face it sees in less time than it takes to say hello. And to run that fast, it uses some very old hardware. Deep inside your brain sit two small clusters of cells, each about the size and shape of an almond. They are called the amygdala, and you can think of them as a pair of alarm bells wired straight into your sense of fear. They are among the fastest things you own. A neuroscientist named Paul Whalen spent years studying these alarm bells and human faces, and he found something genuinely unsettling. Your amygdala reacts to how trustworthy a face looks even when you never consciously see the face at all. A face can be flashed in front of you and then instantly painted over by another image, so fast that you have no idea you saw anything. You would swear the screen was blank. And still, the alarm rings louder for the faces that look less trustworthy. Your brain is scoring people you don't even know you looked at. So why would you be built like this? Why would evolution hand you a system that convicts a stranger before your conscious mind can even show up to the trial? To answer that, you have to leave this room. You have to go back, far back, to a world with no cities, no crowds, no rivers of strangers flowing past. For almost the entire length of the human story, your ancestors lived in small bands, a few dozen people, maybe 150 at the very most. You knew every face. You had known them your whole life. And then, every so often, a figure would appear at the edge of the firelight, someone you did not know. That was one of the most dangerous moments a human being could face, because a stranger was a coin flip with your life riding on it. They might be a lost traveler, a future friend, a future mate. Or they might be a scout for a raiding party that would fall on your camp before dawn. You had seconds to choose, and almost nothing to choose with. No name, no reputation, no shared past. Only a face, lit by fire, getting closer. So your brain learned to do the one thing it could. It learned to gamble, fast, on the only evidence it had, the shape of that face, the set of the brow, the line of the mouth, approach or run. And underneath it ran a piece of cruel arithmetic. The two possible mistakes were not equal. If you fled from a stranger who was actually kind, you lost a little, an awkward moment, a friend you never made. But if you trusted a stranger who meant you harm, you could lose everything you had. When one mistake costs a chance and the other costs your life, the brain stops trying to be accurate. It starts trying to be safe. It learns to suspect first and apologize later. That ancient tilt is still in you. It is why a perfectly neutral face can feel faintly threatening for no reason at all. It is why "I just got a bad feeling about him" is a sentence every human alive understands without needing it explained. But here, the story turns. Because this fast, brilliant, life-saving system carries a deep flaw. It is often, and very confidently, wrong. Here is the flaw. Your snap judgment system reads permanent character off of a temporary face. It takes the accidental shape you were born with and treats it like a confession. A psychologist named Leslie Zebrowitz has spent her whole career on exactly this, and she gave the problem a name: overgeneralization. Your brain evolved to read a few genuinely useful signals. A baby's round face and big eyes mean young, harmless, protect me. A low, drawn brow means anger, danger. Useful readings, both. But then your brain takes those readings and sprays them across every adult it meets. So a grown person who simply happens to have a rounder face, larger eyes, a softer jaw, gets quietly filed as more honest, more innocent, more naive. Not because they are, but because their face accidentally rhymes with a baby's. And a person whose features just happen to settle into a faint frown gets filed as cold or hostile, though their resting face says nothing at all about who they actually are. You are not reading their character. You are reading the bone structure they never chose. If that only ruined a few parties, it wouldn't matter much, but it does not stop at parties. Walk into a courtroom. When researchers looked at real legal cases, they found that people with more babyish faces were treated differently, more readily seen as having done something by accident than on purpose. The curve of a jaw, quietly leaning on the question of guilt. Now walk into a voting booth. In another study, Todorov showed people the faces of real candidates from real elections, people the volunteers had never heard of in their lives, and asked just one question: who looks more competent? Nothing else. Just the face, just a glance. And from those snap judgments alone, he could predict the actual winners of around 7 out of 10 races for the United States Senate. Not their policies, not their promises, the shape of a face, read in a fraction of a second by total strangers, quietly tracking who would go on to hold real power over millions of human lives. Let that settle. The same 100-millisecond verdict your ancestors used to survive the dark is now helping to choose senators. It is sitting on job interviews. It is deciding who gets the loan, who gets the second date, who gets believed, and who gets doubted. There is even a name for the wider trap. Almost 100 years ago, a researcher named Edward Thorndike noticed that once you decide a person has one good quality, say a pleasant face, you quietly assume they have all the others, that they must also be kinder, smarter, more honest. He called it the halo effect. An attractive face throws a glow over everything else about a person, and you mistake that glow for the truth. So now at last, you can open the box from the very beginning. That decision made in 1/10 of a second, the one you didn't consciously made. Here's what it actually is. It is a verdict built for a world that no longer exists. It was designed for a place where you met only a handful of strangers in an entire lifetime, where every unknown face really might mean your death, where being wrong but safe was simply the smartest way to stay alive. You do not live in that place anymore. You live in an ocean of strangers. You pass more unknown faces before lunch than your ancestor met in years, and your 1/10 of a second alarm fires at every last one of them. It was never built for this. It is simply doing its best with rules written 100,000 years ago. And here's the part worth carrying out of this room with you. The very same thing is happening in reverse. Right now, your face is being read too. The expression you don't know you're wearing, the way your features happen to rest when you're thinking about nothing, the brow you were simply born with, all of it is being scanned, in 1/10 of a second, by every stranger who lays eyes on you, and each of them is deciding whether to trust you before you have said a single word. And they believe their feeling is the truth, exactly the way you believe yours. None of you are choosing it. All of you are certain of it. So here's a question worth sitting with. Has there ever been a person you were completely sure about the instant you saw them? Sure they were cold or arrogant or not worth your time, who later turned out to be nothing like that first verdict? Someone your 1/10 of a second got utterly, embarrassingly wrong? Hold on to that person, because that memory is your proof. Proof that the verdict is fast and ancient and powerful, and that it can still be overruled. You cannot stop the first judgment from forming. It is older than you are. But you can learn to feel it arrive. You can learn to hold it loosely, to treat that instant certainty not as a fact about a human being, but as a nervous guess from an ancestor who lived 100,000 years ago and is still, even now, trying to keep you alive. Someone is going to walk into a room today. Before they take their second step, you are going to decide who they are. Now you know who is really deciding, and now, at last, you get a say.